Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Metacast podcast. That's the podcast that explores itself, explores ourselves, and explores the self in general. My name's Ty. I'm going to be your host.
And I'm the cuddliest co-host ever, Distance.
And tonight is the Metacast movie show about Wish I Was Here. Wish I Was Here is a 2014 comedy drama directed by Zach Braff and written by Zach Braff and Adam Braff.
It stars Zach Braff, Kate Hudson, Mandy Patinkin, and Josh Gad.
The budget for this movie was $6 million, and the box office take was $5.5 million.
The tomato meter rating is 47%, with an audience score of 59%.
Wish I Was Here centers around 35-year-old struggling actor Aidan Bloom and the issues that he faces accepting responsibility in life and his father's impending death. This for me was a hard summary to write because really this movie is just kind of about everything. It's about life. It's about like a lot of the stuff we all have to deal with. It's really hard to put this like into like just a one sentence summary like that. But let's go straight to our initial verdict. So should you watch Wish You Were Here? I'm gonna have to give this one a resounding yes. I love this movie. How do you feel?
I'm gonna say yes.
Ooh, that was a tentative yes. Okay. But all right, so we're both gonna give it a yes, but you sounded hesitant. What's your expand upon that?
I mean, like, are you aware that it says no when you said yes?
Oh. How do you do this? Oh, there we go. There we go. We've got this.
We know what we're doing. We do.
Professionals, calm down.
We're professionals. I shouldn't have said anything. I should have just kept it.
No, thank you for pointing that out, but no.
Yeah. Yeah, because I didn't notice it until after. I was like, wait a second, didn't he just say resounding yes? Because I also felt like I kind of had to. I felt this need to like balance things out. Like I can't give it like a bravissimo.
Mm-hmm. That's fair.
But I thought that, I mean, it's not a terrible movie. It's not like the best movie I've ever seen, but it was good and it explored some things. And I think that maybe the way it's written and the way that the events kind of go and some of the sort of weirdness or awkwardness of it, I think that some of it is just stuff that a lot of people can't relate to.
Okay.
But then in the midst of the weird kind of writing and the odd dialogue, I think there's a lot of themes that come through if people are willing to pay attention that can be really cool and interesting.
Yeah.
I think that to some people, even though like I don't look at this movie and think of it as being artsy.
Okay.
I think a lot of people might think that it is.
Mm-hmm.
So while I would say, yeah, watch it, I don't think everyone that does is going to necessarily love it. But I think that even if you're not going to love it, you should just watch it just to see the movie, because I think it explores some really cool stuff that if you want to take the time to listen and think about it, that it's actually a really cool movie, not just as a film, but just as a reflection of the self.
Good. Yeah. I agree with that. Yeah, that's the main reason why I love this movie. So let's move into then spoiler alert territory. So not that there's really much to spoil in this movie. This isn't really like an M. Night Shyamalan twist that's going to jump out at you or anything. But either way, going more like into the details of this movie. So I feel like more often than not we kind of run through my notes. Let's do it differently. Like you guide this. Where do your notes start? What do you want to talk about first?
Zach Braff was dead the whole time. I'm just kidding.
What is that spoiler alerts? You don't have to ruin the whole thing right off the bat. Jeez.
So the very first thing that I noticed was when after the whole like stem cell thing that he talks to about his dad, whatever alternative medicine, blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
The very first thing I wrote down was that I like when he shows up at the hospital and he's looking at his dad, like the camera work, and the music at that moment were really, really good.
Yeah, I do
That's
think
the
there
thing
was.
that kind of
there was a lot of like really good cinematography and like the soundtrack and a lot of like really good, just moments that are constructed well to make you feel something like very, very well.
Yeah. And it's cool because there's a lot of comedic stuff that happens at the beginning of the film. And so you get a very comedic vibe. And then like the sort of the dad he's very much like, you know how they've got the Asian stereotype, like tiger mom.
Yeah.
Like his dad is like a stereotypical like Jewish dad.
Oh yeah.
Like he's what you expect. And that to me was comical that they, you know, put him as such a close like stereotype. But then he's like, I have cancer. It's like, what the fuck?
I do want to quickly. I want to go back to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Actually, I thought, God damn it, Ty. That's what I thought when I said. I was like, okay, I get it now.
Yeah, I'm beginning to notice, like doing this, that I really like these like emotional movies. Like that's kind of my thing, and it's like I hadn't really noticed that before we started to pick this. And then you said something a few weeks ago. You were like, I think all of this is a big experiment in like you picking movies to make me sad. And then I looked at like my list. I was like, fuck, that is like all I like are like these really like emotional movies. It's like, all right, like, yeah, I need to start picking some comedies like next week, Grandma's Boy. But no, but I wanted to circle back real quick to something you said, like how the vibe that it gives you in the beginning. I thought that was really interesting. The way they did that is like, yeah, they bombard you with that really comedic scene with the swear jar right off the bat that I think was written really, really well. There is a little bit of, this movie reminds me of, what is the name of that show? Gilmore Girls. Where it's like the dialogue is almost like too quick and witty like banter that it's like it's not realistic. You know what I mean? To where it's just like people don't talk like that. But like I've like kind of preached before, it's like I'm willing to suspend disbelief, and it's like, well, maybe in this universe people do. But there's like, I love the way that scene was done, where immediately you kind of like love this family. You can't help but love their interactions. You see that there's like this like really funny element going on, and it's like a family movie, quote unquote, but it's also a family movie for adults. Basically, it shows you in that first scene with like abrasive language that it's like, yeah, this is going to be a family movie, but it's like, no, this is more for like, if you're in your 20s or 30s, this is, we're looking back at like, okay, how do we like, we're going to grow up here, and this is more what this is about.
So wait, hold on, let me get this straight though. You watched Gilmore Girls?
Well, I mean, I've seen some of it. I haven't like, when someone says like watched it, to me that like is like I've seen every episode and I kept up with it. But no, like I've seen episodes of that. I don't know much about it. But it's just that show is like notorious for having this dialogue that is like, and it's like just too witty back and forth.
Yeah. Yeah, I always thought the West Wing was like that too. Like, I was like, nobody's this clever.
Exactly.
I would, because the thing you said about the whole like, let's grow up kind of thing. Like, I really did get a coming of age film vibe from it. But the thing that I found interesting, the thing that I thought was really cool, I like the fact that Jim Parsons shows up really early from Big Bang Theory, because he was in Garden State with Zach Braff.
Oh, was he? Okay.
Yeah, he was. Did you see Garden State?
I did, but it has been a long time. I don't know when the last time I saw that was.
There's a scene where his character wakes up in a strange place, and Zach Braff's character, and in the kitchen is a knight, like in
a
armor,
suit of armor. Okay.
Walking around, and he's like, "What the?" And it's Jim Parsons.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Who plays the character? Apparently, he works in one of those dinner theater type places.
Oh, like medieval times. Or okay, gotcha.
And he's wearing his costume. So
gotcha.
In the film, it's a freaking hilarious scene.
So I guess we should. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
The dude from one of his his co-star from Scrubs showed up too.
Yeah.
I forget the actor's name.
I only think of the Family Guy, Black Scrubs. So I think that's what Peter called him.
Donald Faison, I guess.
That sounds right. Yeah.
But
we should I guess, perfect time to touch on the fact that like this movie was a Kickstarter crowdfunded thing that I do think a lot of it was the fans of Garden State, and this is kind of like it's almost kind of Garden State 2 Electric Boogaloo to a certain extent, where it's like I mean, like you just talked about, I mean, Garden State was kind of a coming of age story in your 20s, and this is kind of a coming of age story in your 30s. I feel like he kind of like took the Garden State fan that he knew was out there and was like, okay, now like pay me to make another movie. We'll do it again of where we're at 10 years later.
And for me, like that kind of, I found it irritating that I kind of got that vibe. Like, are you trying to do like Garden State but different? Are you trying to do Garden State again? I didn't really know. I kind of get what he was doing, but I think it was, I don't even really know how to describe it or what to call it, but I just got this vibe that he was trying too hard to do a Garden State-ish thing at like a different place.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that's necessarily like a bad thing, but I just found it somewhat irritating.
Well,
like,
it's interesting though, because it's almost like being derivative of your own work. And it's like at a certain point, it's like, well, it's not necessarily a bad thing because they're the original creator, but at the same time, it's like, well, don't just do the same thing over and over again. But I guess I do kind of like I loved this movie without knowing that stuff, and I've kind of lost some respect for this movie learning recently, like the Kickstarter, everything, and kind of I forgot all about Garden State, didn't even remember that existed, and like this movie in a vacuum was cooler before I remembered Garden State existed, actually. But
I mean, there's one of my favorite movies that's like sort of one of those coming of age things that I like. It was around the same time that I like immensely better than Garden State. Actually, I'm going to put that on our potential list of movies to do. Did you ever see Elizabethtown?
I'm not sure I have. The name sounds familiar, but I can't picture it.
I freaking love that movie.
Sweet. Okay. Yeah, put it on the list, man. Okay. I like him.
But yeah, it's like there's that one's like to me is like a really cool, and it's centered around a death, like his dad, like that's kind of like, so it's got like the same sort of vibe to it. But
okay.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of films that came out like that around the time Garden State did, but like I think I had just started working at Blockbuster when Garden State came out. I think that might be the reason why I remember it.
Gotcha. Okay.
I think I rented it like before, because we would get the movies a week before they came out, and then we could watch them before they came out, so we'd be able to like tell customers if they sucked or not.
That's cool.
And I think that was one of the first ones that I rented like before it came out. So I think that's why I remember it so much.
Okay.
But like I think that like watching the whole like struggling actor thing and recognizing how not glamorous acting actually is was kind of cool.
Yeah.
There was one point in the film where the two of them are standing outside. So you've got you got Kate Hudson, Sarah sitting there talking to Aiden, and the part where he's talking about like his dreams and all this stuff, and she actually asks him the question, when did this, like, I don't know if she says marriage or relationship, but when did this become about like, you following your dreams or whatever kind of shit.
It's like, well, when did it become solely about your dreams? Yeah.
And then you recognize like that there's this moment, because that's one thing that I have found as I've gotten older. It's funny, I'm talking all this shit about like coming of age movies, and now I'm like telling a coming of age story that I have in relation to the film.
Of course, yeah, it's perfect, man.
It's so one thing that I think I've learned, like, and I didn't really think about this before the podcast. Even this isn't even something I wrote down. Like, I think that as I've gotten older, like as I've approached my 30s and I've gotten more into my 30s, like I've started to become a little less selfish.
Okay. Yeah.
And I've started to realize what stuff I was doing when I was younger that was completely worthless and completely a waste of time. And I think that he, at this point, when she actually tells him that, he recognizes that he has been a bit selfish about this whole dream thing.
Yeah.
And he doesn't even realize how much his wife hates her job.
Because, I mean, it is fair that, like, chasing your dreams is important. Like, I mean, he does have a point there, but yeah, like you're saying, you have to realize that at a certain point, it's not just all about you. And like, I don't think he ever thought about the fact that, like you're saying, like, yeah, she hates her job. She's not she had to give up on her dreams so you could chase yours. And you've been doing that for how long without considering that at all?
Because I think right after he says to someone how much she loves her job, they cut to the talking dick guy scene.
Yeah. Was it Jerry? I think is his name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh god, that's just such a punchable character.
They do great at, I think, the writing and the acting. I don't know what the dude's name was that played Jerry, but I think he like great job of like just playing the douche perfectly.
And like even the boss, like, yeah, but he's so hilarious. Like what?
It did crack me up when the boss was like, but like, what did the half boner sound like? He's like, he didn't do like a black guy voice, did he? She's like, no, it was high pitched. He's like, oh, phew, okay.
It's like, as long as it's not racist, it's okay if you felt uncomfortable. It's like,
yeah. That's it. Welcome to America 2020. Yeah, as long as it's not racist, it's okay if you felt uncomfortable.
And there's like, I do not know why this is in here, but in my notes I have in quotation marks, I think he'll want to be with Whiskers. Oh, they're talking about burying him in the backyard.
Burying Grandpa. Okay,
yeah.
Yep.
Which was like the son, I think. Which
I thought that was like such a good way. I love those scenes where it's an adult having to answer a kid's like tough question or say something in a way, and like the way he was like, well, I think we have to figure out what Grandpa wants. And he's like, I think Grandpa will want to be with Whiskers. That was cute.
The kids were perfect cast too.
Yeah.
Like they were cast very, very well. And the son was like, he was spot on. Like he was there like in every scene.
Honestly, I think everyone, I mean, even Josh Gad, the brother, I think he was great. Like I thought all of the acting was top notch in this.
You know what movie I love Josh Gad in?
What's that?
Jobs, where he plays Steve Wozniak.
Yes, yeah, he's great.
I thought he was great in that movie. I thought he did a better Woz than Ashton Kutcher did Steve Jobs. Like you'll never find an actor to do Steve Jobs well.
Have you seen the other
with Fassbender?
Yeah, with Seth Rogen playing Woz. Yeah, I liked Seth Rogen's Woz too. I'm not going to say that he was better than Josh Gad, but I think that his portrayal was pretty good too. But
yeah, he did a good job. I think that he was a good cast for it. But I think that in the specific, the way they were good for each of the movies they were in. Like if you switched them, they would have been wrong for either or. I
agree with that.
But I thought it was really funny when they're the scene like where the daughter shaves her head.
1 second real quick. I want to touch on this. Made me think about that when we were talking about the acting. I do think I've realized something about this movie that I do love it, but I don't know if it's as great as I thought it was. I think that there's really good acting that kind of makes some of the stuff that maybe is subpar unnoticeable, if that makes sense. Where it's like maybe not necessarily like bad writing, but it's just like scenes that are kind of weak or ideas that are like kind of weak, or maybe stuff that isn't fully fleshed out gets kind of swept under the rug by really, really great acting and by characters or by casting jobs that were just perfect for the roles.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. I think that, and another thing is I think he was trying to pack so much into the film.
Yeah.
That there's like, and I mean, I can relate. I mean, like if you have to make a quick presentation at work about something very complex, you try to do the same thing. But yeah, I think that you're right. I think that maybe it would have been better to use less well-known people. And because there's a lot of stuff that you don't really get to explore as fully as you would want to, I think.
Because I watched one video where someone was kind of critiquing it, and they pointed out like something that it didn't even occur to me at all. What's the daughter's name? Grace. That character is like the entire time definitely more sad about having to leave the school than her grandfather dying. And never really jumped out to me until that person pointed it out. But it's like, I think that it's because just that I don't remember the actor's name that played Grace, but she just like killed it as that character. And like, it never really jumped out to me that like, that wasn't really consistent with how that in my mind should be, I guess. But then it was like, once he pointed that out, I was like, oh yeah, that is very true. She's like, she cares more about having to leave the Jewish school than the fact that her grandfather's dying.
And to some degree, I would say that's a relatively not good, but accurate depiction of reality.
Well,
I would expect a kid that age to act that way and be like that. I would expect the kid to center a lot of things on themselves. And also a child that that young. I mean, was she like 13, 14, somewhere in there?
I think so, yeah.
You're not used to any of what's happening anyway.
Yeah.
So like losing somebody's very confusing, I think. Like,
that's true.
you know, I've had times like where it's like, oh yeah, whatever. My uncle's dead. It's all good. You know, we knew it was going to happen. He's fucking old. It's all, you know, whatever. Then like I'm driving to work 2 days later and I'm like, oh God, I gotta pull over. Like, you know, so like that actually happened.
Yeah.
Like I just got really sad all of a sudden and pulled over, and I was like 23 at the time. So I mean, grief is confusing, and it seems to be different every time. But it is. I didn't notice that about the character, but now that you mention it, it definitely was happening. That she didn't really seem as bothered. But you know, the scene where she gives her grandpa the welding goggles.
Yeah.
And he's all just being Mr. Complainer and be like, what am I gonna do with these? And then when she says the thing about like, this is so you can like whatever, something about you can see grandma in the light or something like that.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
So, and then like, then all of a sudden, like he just sits there all saucer eyed. And like his granddaughter like comes over and like kind of like hugs him, and he just sits there staring at the fucking ceiling like, wow, this is fucked up. Like, wow, I was a dick about this. Like, wow, my granddaughter gave me these because of this like indoctrinated superstition that she has that I paid for because I wanted to have wonderful Jewish grandkids. And it, like that scene to me was the first scene where I was like, oh fuck, dude, it feels.
Yeah, I thought it was very. Oh man,
the camera work at that scene is fucking brilliant.
Yes.
Like the kind of pan they do that's like sort of over the bed, like really cool.
Yep. It oh man. Yeah, no, I think that scene was done very, very well. And never mind.
I'm getting misty just thinking about it, bro.
Yeah, man, it's a touching scene, dude. It's yep. This movie does I think that, like we were talking about earlier, like I think there is in it a lot for many different people that need different things. And I think that like that scene, especially from two different sides, or like that whole concept you see from two different sides, people that may need to experience that like there's the maybe someone who's in Aiden's position where you're dealing with losing someone, or I would say actually more like what is the brother Noah, in Noah's position, like maybe you're losing someone who you're estranged to, and you know, they've been an asshole in the past, and you deal with the idea of like forgiveness. Like, is that like, do you, you know, reconcile with them just basically to experience their death, or do you like, you know, kind of write them off and go on? But then also like the other side of that, seeing it from like Gabe's side of like knowing like, wow, I've been kind of a prick, and it's like I need to like calm down a little bit. And it's like maybe, you know, like the like literally like realizing like, oh, my granddaughter's doing something that's trying to be incredibly thoughtful, and I'm being like a jerk about it, like in the first few sentences. Yeah, like.
And I mean, I've actually done that before. Like I've been a smartass to someone I was dating. Like, what do you mean? What do you need me to help you get out of your car at 10:30 p.m.? What could possibly be this? It's fucking important.
Yeah.
Seriously? Like, fuck, whatever. So I put my gym shorts on and my flip flops. I go outside. He's like, oh, it's under the blanket. And this chick bought me a guitar, and I was like, oh god.
Yeah. Yeah, you're an asshole.
I'm
yeah.
an asshole.
So the blanket's for I'm supposed to sleep out here, right? I guess that's how this works.
For me to, okay. You can return this guitar now. I'm sorry. And there was some funny shit though. Like, I mean, the scene where they're in the Aston Martin dealer and he's trying to like con the dude that's actually who played Turk on Scrubs into letting them drive the car, and he's like, I see your daughter's sick. He's like, oh. Yeah.
So sick. Yeah.
So sick. Yeah. You're like, this is so wrong.
Yeah.
But it's you're at this point where like Aiden seems like such a he seems like such a fun-loving character. Like you kind of can't be mad at him.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's kind of fucked up, you do like the mischievousness is still like kind of endearing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I thought that there was a scene in there that the one of the scenes that kind of got me was when he's looking in the mirror. I'm not sure why, but then his wife comes up behind him, Sarah, and she kind of puts her arms around him, and he's like, "What's going on back there?" And she's like, "Oh, I'm comforting you."
He's actually putting clothes in the dryer.
Is that what he's doing?
Yeah, he's standing, or washer or dryer. But yeah, I know the scene you're talking about. Yeah, yep.
And I like the fact that they sing a James Taylor song together because I really like James Taylor.
Mm-hmm.
But the line that she said, she's like, "I haven't seen you in a while." He's like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "No, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah,
but I'm glad you're here."
Yes.
Because I have done the same shit, like where people close to me, I act totally different for a while, and then something happens or somebody says something to me, and all of a sudden I'm actually being myself.
Yeah.
And there was like a whole like year and a half period, maybe 2 years, where I was really guarded and put up this whole fucking persona this whole time about all kinds of shit. And then when I finally like decided like I'm done pretending to be this other thing, I realized that people around me missed the person I was.
Yeah.
And that the new people I'd met liked me better being myself.
Yep.
But I mean, and then like the whole next thing is really weird. Like when they're doing that weird role play thing the next morning.
Oh, the Game of Thrones.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it just me, or are their mouths not moving for parts of that?
Oh, I don't know if I noticed that at all.
It looked like there's a couple spots where their mouths weren't moving, and I was very weirded out by it.
I think I just realized something about myself. Never mind. We're not talking about this. Never mind. Nothing. I realized that I think I subconsciously look away during like scenes that are like either like kind of like sex scenes or love scenes or romantic scenes. I don't think I was ever actually looking at the screen during that scene any of the times I've watched this movie.
Oh yeah, I mean,
I really like. I think that's just a thing I do where I'm just like, oh well.
I was looking at the screen and I got a half boner. And I was like, oh hey guys, just kidding.
Your half boner sounds like Mr. Hanky.
Yeah. Oh, it really does, doesn't it?
I got a half boner and he was like, "You smell all flowery."
And if you haven't seen the movie, watch it and you'll understand the bizarre reference I just made. Like.
But I got a different thing from that too, which is also, I mean, not only like you were saying, being yourself, but I got the idea of I put it kind of in my theme area of like just growing up and accepting responsibility, but also just the idea of like being present, where it's like, you know, even if you was like not necessarily like not being yourself, just like being fully there, you know, like what was he just kind of like, you know, half-heartedly or like, you know, letting his life pass him by rather than just, you know, really being present for it.
Yeah, I mean, and I could see that. Like, he seemed to get wrapped up in a lot of other shit, and like the stresses of this and the humdrum of that. You can also see like he is somewhat cynical, even though it's funny at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
He is somewhat cynical.
Oh yeah.
And you know, I think that it was really weird when, and I've seen this happen to people, like people I work with. Particularly like people that are like upper leadership level in companies. I've seen people that a lot of individuals thought were like kind of jerks, or they thought that they were abrasive or acted entitled or any other number of negative traits you might want to assign to somebody. And then one of their parents would die. And then they would just be completely different after that. And most of the time it would be for the better.
Yeah.
It's like what memento mori, like the thing that the Greeks would do. Or that was the Romans, actually. I think like when a general would come back, the memento mori would just be this like, remember that you will die kind of thing.
Well, I do think that no matter what, if the death of someone that you're close to is going to change you, it's only going to change you in the positive. I would think, because it's like, if it's, you know, like if you care about them enough, it's going to be a positive change. Like the only way that it would be negative is if you like literally don't give a fuck, and then it wouldn't change you. But it's like, you know, like I don't know. Yeah, I think that if you actually like care, that it's going to have to be a positive change. But
yeah, and I would think so. I mean, but you know, like it's once the whole like grief process is done with, I think on the other side of
exactly. Yeah, once you fully come to terms with it, yeah.
Which is funny when there's like the whole like grief pamphlet he's looking at the beginning of the film. I'm like, that's funny.
It did crack me up that one scene where he looks over and there's the empty thing that says this pamphlet may save your life. Like, oh, like, that's like
that's terrifying. It's like opening a fortune cookie and having no fortune inside.
Yeah.
the scene like where his dad's talking about like the last thing he wants to taste.
Mm-hmm. Was it the toasted almond bar or whatever?
Yeah. What would be yours?
Oh man, that's
the
tough.
last thing you could ever taste.
It would be honestly, it would be some type of like weird ice cream, but it would be, I'm into like super weird, like childish flavors. Like it would be like a cotton candy or like a bubble gum type ice cream, like one of those like super sweet,
Yeah.
like I like stuff like that. Like that's the diffuser that I have in the background that like diffuses a scent into my room. I normally do like cotton candy or bubble gum or pink lemonade, like all sorts of super sweet smells like that. But it would be something along those lines. What about you?
I hadn't really thought about it till just now. Because I put that in my notes and I thought it was kind of odd, and then I was like, that would be a fun question. I think it would be like when you make biryani, like the Indian dish, like with those very like well spiced like rice.
Mm-hmm.
There's on the bottom of the pot, there's always some like rice that kind of chars and sticks to the bottom.
Little burny bits, yeah.
And a lot of people will scrape off those little bits and eat them. If that would be my last thing, would be the charred, like sticky, like burned rice on the bottom of the biryani pot. That would be it.
I liked that idea, the fact that that was even spoken about in this movie, just the thought of like simple pleasures like that. And it's like, literally, I mean, facing mortality, facing, the scariness of like, well, I guess, some people, maybe it's not scary, but like to most people, like, death is somewhat scary, but like facing that infinite, void and just like thinking like, okay, well, maybe I can have one little bit of something good, like to like, I like that idea of just like a simple pleasure of like, oh, well, I know I'm gonna have to deal with this, but maybe I can taste something good before it. Like,
yeah, I mean, that's like, it's interesting that food is a place we go to very often for that kind of simple pleasure. To lighten things up a bit, is it just me or was Furry Chick unbelievably dreamy?
Oh yeah. Okay, so I do have on my list of things that I don't necessarily like about the movie. I kind of hated Noah's Ark with Furry Chick.
Did you just say Noah's Ark?
Noah's Ark, yeah. Oh, I didn't even fucking realize. Oh my god.
I was saying, you mean his character arc?
His story arc. But I did like.
I thought you did that on purpose.
I can't believe I didn't notice that. I literally like made a Noah's Ark pun and didn't even fucking realize it. But no, like it I've just got a personal thing. I hate when the nerdy dude gets the hot chick. I just have a vendetta against that. So when that happens in movies, it just bothers me. Like it's just, I always like, it always rubs me the wrong way.
I'm hearing some like, are you projecting here?
Yes, no, it comes from a place of envy, 100%. Yeah, but
trust me, the nerdy guy can get the hot chick. It happens. You can love anime and still date somebody beautiful.
But no, that's just always been a thing I've preached. Where it's like I just hate it when it's like, and when it's super like telegraphed like that too, where you just know it's coming the entire time. Like, it was just, I don't know, there was nothing there other than like, yeah,
it's like they insert this character somewhat randomly into the storyline. You're like, I know what you guys are gonna do. Like it's yeah, I agree, it was unbelievably telegraphed.
It did serve one purpose though. The scene about Poontang was hilarious. At least it did that.
Later on, she's actually saying, "Did you end up getting some poontang from her, Uncle Noah?"
Yeah, like, did she end up giving you poons? Like, she sure did.
And now to make things more depressing, the scene where she snatches the phone from Aiden when Aiden is like trying to, because before I mention that, like I like the sort of weird desperation between like Noah like being sad about his dad, but then also trying to kind of hide from it.
Yeah.
And then the desperation that his dad has to make amends. Not necessarily desperation, but he wants to make amends because he realizes he's been kind of a douche.
Well,
And
but it basically took oh fuck, what is Kate Hudson's character's name? I'm bad with the character.
Sarah.
It took Sarah like pointing it out for him to realize that though. Like the whole scene where she even has to ask him, like, he's like, my boys know how I feel, and she's like, are you sure, Gabe? And she's like, you know, this is the last chance you get. Like, because it seemed like at that point, like he didn't feel like there was any amends to be made. At least that's the feeling that I got early in the movie, is that his position on that kind of changed.
And he just may have been like unaware of it, just not being present in the same way that Aiden like didn't recognize that he made his entire marriage about like his dreams, and like didn't even fucking care about like his wife was doing, all that stuff.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it's almost like that's sort of like the role of that character in the film, I guess, was just to show people like where they'd fucked up.
Yeah.
Which is good. You gotta have one of those.
Oh yeah.
But the scene like where Grace snatches the phone from Aiden and she is talking to Uncle Noah on the phone and starts out with a funny like poontang thing and all that, and the part where she's like tells him like what it is and like telling him that he really needs to come and like see his dad and all this other stuff. Like she said a lot of things. It was a very dense dialogue.
Yeah.
But like I'm an uncle, so like I've kind of got a soft spot for that scene. Like that I'm sitting here thinking to myself, like eventually, at some point, I'm gonna learn something from one of the children in my family. Like they're gonna have some idea or some thought, and you can really listen to the words of children. You can gain a lot of perspective from it. You know?
Yeah.
And for me, I just sat there and thought to myself, like, man, that is heavy. Like, what would I do if like my niece snatched the phone from my sister and just laid it on me like that? I'd be like, and then the fact that he opens up to his niece of all people and like says, I'm scared. Yeah. Like for me, like that's also weird. Like, I don't know if I'd ever be okay with her seeing me like that. Yeah. Like, that kind of vulnerability. Because there's just people in my life that I think need to see that, and other people that probably don't. Like for my niece in particular, like thinking of her, and I mean she's quite young, so like I don't really know what she's going to be like at that age. But and another thing is like my oldest sister doesn't talk to my dad.
So, you said that before. Yeah,
I was sitting there thinking to myself, like, man, like what happens then? And I've thought several times, like when that dude finally croaks, like, and he's all, well, he'll be cremated. I think that's what he wants. Like, what the hell is gonna happen with that sister? Like, I'm like, that really like hit me, like just thinking about that situation. And I'm like, is one of the kids gonna snatch the phone and talk to her? Like, I doubt that. Yeah. The kids that are old enough to wouldn't.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But yeah, it's like that scene right there for me was like very much like, shit. Like, what am I supposed to do? Because I think there was some part of Noah knew he needed to do this for him and needed to do this for his dad, but also didn't want to disappoint his niece either.
Exactly. Yeah.
For this person, he acted like he didn't really give that much of a shit about. Like he was super flaky when he was like watching them earlier in the movie. Yep. You can see like this veneer start to kind of peel off of him. Like, he's done trying to fool people. Yep.
That part of Noah's Ark I did like the actual the character transformation and all. I think that part was done very well.
You finally see some kind of honesty from him, because like the writing, they kind of make you kind of think of him as having little character. And
or at least at least like little goals, little ambition, kind of like, but you do see like a lot of worth there as they show you more about him as the movie progresses.
I like the ups and downs in the movie too, because right after that scene, they're in the grocery store. It's like, Dad, I think I see the guy that sits next to Mommy at work. Yeah. And I like the way
that was done well. Scene. Yeah. I liked the whole Jerry's arc, or the whole like how like Aiden's like, I mean, that's what was talked about before of like this movie. It just introduces a lot of concepts of like things to think about, which, and like you kind of talked about it, like it felt like maybe is there too much? Like was it Zach Braff? I mean, okay, so this came out, 10 years after Garden State, I believe, right? Something around It
Yeah,
was
that
a whole
sounds about
decade.
right.
Yeah, so it's like basically every idea he had for that entire decade were they all crammed into one movie when they should have maybe been in different projects or things like that. Like,
It's like, this is it. This is the only time.
exactly, yeah.
You know, I did find it odd that there's the scene where he does the weird fantasy scene in the spacesuit,
Mhm.
and then you see that the robed, hooded person he's running from, they're lying on the ground, and he takes the sort of the hood off of them and sees that it's his dad.
Yeah.
I don't fucking get that at all. Like, I don't understand that.
I just took it as so like similar to okay, so you see that it's his dad later in the movie than when he goes to the is it temple or synagogue? I actually don't know the right term. When he goes
synagogue, I think.
Okay, but when he goes to consult,
are those two different places?
See, I'm not sure. I thought they were interchangeable, but now I'm not sure if there's a difference. But either way, when he goes and he kind of like talks to I assume it's a rabbi, but the younger guy, and he like, you know, he's asking. I actually wrote down what he was talking, but he's basically like talking to him about like the like infinity, and that's what he sees as spirituality. And he's like asking him, he's like, well, I see these, I'm remembering this stuff from a child recently. Do you think that that's God trying to talk to me? That scene is before you realize that it's his father that he's seeing in those, right? I believe.
Yeah, that's way before that. Yeah.
Okay, so he's like he's still struggling to come to terms with what it is on his psyche that's weighing him, and I think he realizes that it is a lot of just unrefined is not the word I'm looking for. Just loose ends that have not tied up with his relationship with his dad, like things that he needs to say, things that he needs to do before his dad dies. And I think that's what he realizes is like this stress that he's feeling, this thing that's been chasing him this whole movie is this like this emotional weight of like these things that he hasn't yet said or done regarding his dad.
There was like I had this weird feeling in that scene that I didn't know exactly what they were trying to do with the plot. Like I was like, so is his dad dead because he chose to be overprotective and go on like the revenge route, and his dad's gonna die while he's like telling off talking dick guy?
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I didn't understand exactly.
That would have been shitty. That would have sucked if he like actually missed his. Yeah, that would have been bad.
But I didn't know what they were trying to do with that. I think that there was supposed to be some kind of like, because it got somewhere, that whole story did. But that whole scene was fucking hilarious where he like goes up to him and he's like, I will sue you. I'm like, what? Who says that?
Yeah.
And then that dude punches him.
Yep.
And then like, cause for me, like I'm one of those like really protective, like kind of aggressive type people. So like, somebody like is disrespectful or like harmful to someone that I care about, like I'm gonna be all like, ugh, and like, that happens. And I'm like, oh, you fucking pussy, like totally broke out about the whole thing. But it was funny. And then like when his son's like, I think you lost, Dad.
Yeah. But of course, I do love hearing later, like you get to see the justice scene where, of course, Jerry's getting fired and he has to take that like sexual harassment seminar however many times or whatever.
And for me, like that, like me personally felt like the movie telling me I told you so.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, oh, you stupid punk. Like the only thing to do is beat the crap out of the person. Like they're called laws. And I'm like, oh yeah.
Yep.
You can actually do that, because I thought the threats were going to be much more colorful, other than like. But also, it's like, did you ever see one of the Bridget Jones movies?
I've seen all of them.
The scene where Colin Firth and Hugh Grant fight each other.
Yes.
When you watch two guys that don't know how to fight each other, it's like the most hilarious thing in the world. So, but it's also for those characters in the movie, it's endearing.
Mm-hmm.
So you see that like Zach Braff's character Aiden, he goes up to this guy and doesn't do the big badass dude thing. He just does like a regular guy, like that this is what we do because rule of law.
Which I like a lot, because I feel like you're saying, more often than not, it's going to be the regular guy that has to deal with that. So it's like, how does the regular guy deal with that situation when you're not the big badass that like. You don't practice being intimidating or things like that. It's like, how do I deal with this where my wife is being literally sexually harassed at work? The boss isn't doing anything, so it's like like are you supposed to do anything? Like she said not to help, right? Like, but what is your role? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like that's I liked that they put that in as a thought to explore, but I do wonder, like, what is the right thing to do in that situation? Like, how is the way Aiden handled it correct? It worked out well, but does that mean that it's necessarily the right thing to do?
Yeah, it's it's like, because in the movies it's like ex special forces operative,
Yeah,
character name here is faced with this thing. Like, well, not there's not that many people that were in special forces, folks.
exactly.
So it's like, so it's like, what do you do when your skill set or your tool set or your solutions are different, or
Yep.
like normal, like
Yeah.
normal people shit.
Yeah, like 99% of us. Yeah.
And there's a lot of stuff in here, like with the whole like dad and son thing, that kind of like got me.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that his father seems to give the two of them some respect right before he kicks it.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
that death scene was done very well. That was a really heavy scene. Yeah.
And it's like he says the thing about like Noah, like, oh yeah, you're a warrior, and like he's like, I just won a contest. Yeah, but you won.
Yeah. Yeah, he says he was proud of him. Yeah.
And then, like, Aiden getting some respect for like standing up for his wife and kind of trying to hold the family together and stuff. And to me, like, that's one thing I think that I wanted for most of my life, or at least my adult life, for maybe like 19, 20 on, was for my dad to respect me for something.
Yep.
And getting that from my father was a very valuable thing for me, and I'm just glad I don't have to wait till he's on his fucking deathbed.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Like but it was really cool when Noah comes in and he's like, do you see that? Or is God very different than I imagined?
Yeah, that was done well. That was funny. Yeah.
Because they do kind of that's one of those jokes where they kind of ambush you in the dramatic scene.
Yeah. Yep.
And it makes it funnier though. Like that the timing in that case is like,
for me, because it's like that scene, it was like I was like super teared up, and then it's one of those like you're already like you're feeling pretty like not sad but like emotional that way, but then it's like and you get to like have like a lighthearted laugh before it like drops back down into like a different emotion. Like, yeah, it's done well. That is one thing about this movie, is like it's like the feelings are done too well that they are almost contrived. And it's like, it's still like a great experience, but it's like, it feels like it's just too much setup. It doesn't feel organic the way that it's like, it's like, it's this emotional roller coaster that you're on that is like almost calculated. And it's just like a little too much sometimes, where it's like, all right, hold on. Like,
yeah, that is true. And it almost seemed like there was a desire to make it seem like things were spontaneous, but they just weren't.
Yeah. Yep.
But I thought that, after the death thing happens, like the couple little scenes after that are super cool.
Mm-hmm.
Did you not find it somewhat heartbreaking when Gabe says, if there's a next time, I'll do better?
Dude,
and then he says, try to remember how fast it goes.
Yes, that whole line is like that's what I'm talking about. That death scene being done so well. It's like, I think that is this idea that we don't get at all until it's too late. And it's like it's an idea that's been echoed through so much, but it's like, I mean, it's the whole like you don't know what you got till it's gone, and the whole like but it is that like life flashes by so fucking quickly, and you feel like it's taken a long time during this brief moment that you're young, and you want you're like oh, hurry up, like I can't wait for this. And then before you know it, that thing you can't wait for is like long gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like a very poignant like last line, or like last word for like a person to say, is just like letting people know, like, yeah, just remember how fast it goes.
Yeah, like the the greatest wisdom of a dying person. And man, like I've had some really interesting things happen. Like I've talked to like, much older relatives that were on their deathbed.
Mm-hmm.
They were on their way out, and some of the things they say, like, I had an uncle like tell me some stuff about his like life in his younger years that I never knew. And actually, he's the tattoo on my shoulder was something that he said to me. Never stopped moving.
Yeah.
And then I had one of she actually was my uncle's wife, my aunt by marriage. And she told me this whole like fucking crazy story about how she and my uncle got together and like before the war, and then he came back and like all this other stuff. And I'm like, holy shit, like you just gave me a screenplay. And it is interesting to hear the stuff that people will lay on you when they're on their way out and some of the interesting things that they'll say. Um, and of course there's dementia, and in that case, well,
true, yeah. Take it with a grain of salt, right?
Yeah, what a fucking waste. Yeah, a grain of salt. You know, like the whole jump in the pool scene with Grace and Aiden. There is something about that there was a moment where when I saw the sort of relationship, the trust, the whole like I got you kind of thing, with her jumping in the pool and her dad being there, like there was this brief moment where I was like, man, I don't completely hate the idea of having kids.
Yep, this is one of those movies that does that for me too. Yeah. Yep.
And then like the scene where like Sarah's surfing, which pretty rad. I mean, because that shows you like kind of like maybe there's things that she wants to do instead of getting harassed by Jerry at work.
Well, I love that conversation they had on the beach where like the happiest time he saw her was surfing. I love that they show you that then later. And I love the line that she says, we're like, hold on, the happiest you've ever seen me. And like, cause he said something about how like she was way too far for him to see, but like I could tell you were smiling. She's like, the happiest you've ever seen me was a smile you didn't even see. And he's like, yeah, I guess. Yeah.
That was a good scene. Like I thought that the lighting was cool, and like the angle, like I think that was like done in slow motion. I think they filmed it like at a different frame rate, which gave some drama and all that. And then like the daughter Grace wearing the goggles, the chemistry goggles.
Yeah. Yep.
And like with the welding goggles in chemistry class.
Yeah.
And then what the hell was the son's name?
I do not remember.
Comic relief son.
Tucker.
Tucker.
Yeah.
And him like running with like the flag and all this stuff, and then doing, I'm assuming that was Hamlet. No, Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
It's Jim Parsons' character does the one line about he sees her for the first time. Like, who is that? Was that was Romeo and Juliet, right?
I think so. I don't know, man. My Shakespeare knowledge is not the best.
Yeah. And like everybody just kind of doing a different thing, and that whole like montage sort of thing at the end after the death sort of like summarizes the thing that I was saying before about like seeing people that seem one way and then they lose someone close to them and they are completely another.
Yeah, well, that is like, the biggest part of this story to me is the coming of age, the growing up that Aiden has to do, and it is like, in my mind, it's separate from the death, but I guess like it's really not. You know, it's like, a lot of what he learned is during this time, which I don't know why I think it is a consequence of that.
And this is when you said the thing about Garden State and this movie being two different types of coming of age films. My mother at one point told me that it's like when one of your parents dies, you feel like there's a hole in your safety net, and then when both of your parents are dead, you feel like that safety net is gone.
Yeah.
And that's like, fuck.
Yeah.
It's
that's
okay. We're doing a comedy next week. So.
But that is why I like this movie so much. It makes you think about these. Like I talked about earlier, just heavy ideas, heavy thoughts you need to have during your lifetime. And I think it's done well. I think that they're thoughts that you need to explore, and I think that doing them while watching an entertaining movie that will also make you laugh is a good time to do that, rather than like sitting in a dark room contemplating your mortality. But I love one thing I have in my notes, that this movie it kind of spurred a thought in my head where it's like I'm gonna start calling this type of movie, because like, you know, earlier I called it a comedy drama, and I don't know if that does it justice. It's like that those are just two words I staple together because there's funny parts and then there's serious parts, you know. But it's like this movie to me is like it's a life movie. It is a like the movie itself is a life movie. I call it that for two reasons, because it, like, one, it makes you confront those life important ideas that I think are things that are, you know, necessary. And then two, the movie is like a microcosm of life. It's hard to put a genre on life. Life is just this experience you have, that there will be moments that'll make you laugh. There'll be moments that'll make you cry. There will be moments that'll make you think. There'll be moments that'll make you feel. It's a variety of like, and that to me is like, this type of movie is like that. It's not, you know, when you look at a comedy, you know, it's like it's meant to just make you laugh. Like this to me is like a spectrum of emotion and thought, like put into a 2-hour block.
Yeah, I like that. I like that kind of classification. A life movie, not to be confused with a Lifetime movie.
Yes, exactly. Very different thing. Yeah.
Life movie. Yeah, I mean that's kind of. Yeah. Wow.
So what else do you have in your notes? What else you got?
That's pretty much that. I think I've kind of hit all the stuff that I really wanted to.
You ready to do favorite line?
Oh yes.
Oh my god, this was tough for me.
This was super easy for me.
Was it, dude? Yeah. I really like. Okay, so going into this, I didn't think I was a Zach Braff fan, but I realized, like, trying to pick a favorite line, I was in love with the dialogue of this movie. There were like 5, like I had to whittle it down to a top 5, and then even then it was like hard for me to pick a favorite. Like, so there were a lot of lines I really liked, and if he wrote it, it's like maybe I do like Zach Braff's writing a little bit. But I ended up my favorite line. Okay, so it's prefaced right afterward, right before the I assume it's a rabbi, but he asks Zach, do you feel a spirituality in anything? And the line is infinity. Looking up at the sky with my kids and trying to explain to them that it goes on forever. I do feel a particular spirituality in that. Could that be God? Oh. Something muted you. There you are. You're back.
Oh, did my audio cut out?
Yeah, your audio cut out for a second. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I just pretty much said, wow, that's a good line. That's pretty much it.
I thought that was a good
That's
line.
all anybody missed. So my favorite line is, Hola, señor. I am on the witness stand, and I only heard one bang. Uno bang. There was only one uno bang. Not 3. Uno.
If it makes you feel any better, I thought you were Hispanic. All right, guys. So next week's episode is going to be The Replacements. We're gonna you said there was 2000, right?
Yeah.
The year 2000 movie, The Replacement. So come back. We're gonna talk about that next week. So that will bring us to the end of this week's episode of the Metacast Movie Show. If you're watching this on YouTube and you've enjoyed the discussion, hit that like button, subscribe to keep up to date, and comment below and tell us how you felt about Wish You Were Here. If you want to further keep up to date with the show or even join us as a guest on a future episode, you can join our Discord. The link is in the description down below. And we will be live next week on Wednesday, 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on twitch.tv/TylerTV. Thanks everyone for listening, and I hope you have a great week.